All right, so tonight we're going to talk about automated scoring systems. This is a topic that there's not going to be a lot of Perl in tonight's discussion because it's more a lot of theoretical stuff. But it's been near and dear to my heart for the last 3 or 4 months as I've been working on various projects. I've been using more and more automated scoring systems, and I thought that if I can pass along the idea of it to you is more important than passing along a particular implementation of it. Because the implementations I've used have been very widely varied. So passing along, showing you a specific implementation isn't all that interesting. Although at the end, if I have time, I can show you some code too if you really want to see it. But the code isn't all that interesting. It's the idea of using this for different properties. So if you got any questions along the way, let me know. But otherwise, we'll just get going. So why am I talking about this? Tonight, the reason I'm talking about this is because of this. I want you, as an audience, to pick out the best blue circle out of those.
The one right there.
I like the one in the middle.
Oh, the one on the left's actually nice.
Yeah, see, and it's basically impossible to pick out the best blue circle. Exactly. Exactly. What is best? But that one's actually the best one. That white circle is actually the best blue circle. Absolutely the best by far. By far. So here's a better explanation of this. So what are the problems with this? You've seen this on virtually every website you've ever gone to.
Yes.
What are the problems with this? Just tell me. Shout them out.
There's only 5 selections.
It's only 5 selections. Okay.
5 reviews. So it's like there's 5 reviews and then one-star review, and that really throws the averages off.
Right. So if you have a fewer number of reviews, the results are very inaccurate. Yeah. Okay.
I always rate everything 4 or 5 stars because if I already watched the movie, I know I like it.
That's a good point. There's some user bias. If you already watched it, you probably liked it, or you wouldn't have watched it in the beginning.
Some people only rate movies they hate.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that's true too. All right.
It's an item for purchase. Sometimes it's somebody ordered the wrong thing and they wouldn't take allow a return. They're like 1 star.
Yeah, that's true. So they're rating the customer service of the organization rather than the product itself. So yeah, absolutely.
Which leads to it only grades an overall score, not a particular feature.
Exactly. So inaccurate without a lot of ratings, which is what Tim said. Yeah. Off-topic ratings, which is what you were just saying. Can't be sure what the aspects the rating is referring to. Again, it could be the product that we're talking about. It could be because you only rate bad things. It could be because you only rate good things. Different people will use the stars differently. Like some people will be really picky about giving a 5-star review to something, and other people will be like, "Yeah, I liked it, 5 stars." And then, of course, the same person on a different day might give a different result, and that's a really big problem. So, what is automated scoring? It's multi-factor observations. So we're going to measure lots of different things. It's heuristic analysis, which we'll get into a little more detail, but basically using experience to analyze things. It's classification from deterministic algorithms, which means that same inputs result in the same outputs. And we're going to limit human interference because humans are erratic, right? So automated scoring. So what can it be used for? It can be used for classification. Like SpamAssassin classifies spam. It can be used for quality rankings. Google does this in its PageRank, for example. It can be used for game balancing. That's one of the things I use it for, to make sure that all the different players or all the different pieces in a game fit together in a way that makes sense mathematically. And it can be used in diagnostics. Can be used in electronics. It can be used in medical imaging. It can be used in all kinds of things. But before we get into that, I should admit a few things. First, I'm not a scientist, a mathematician, or a statistician. I barely understand those 3 fields. So,
do you play one on TV?
I do play one in this room tonight, and there's a giant monitor there, so I guess on TV, yes. Your results may vary if you talk to an actual scientist, mathematician, or statistician. That said, I have done a lot of this stuff, so I do have some real-world experience with it, and I'm modeling it off of a bunch of people that know what the hell they're talking about, so that helps too. So multi-factor observations. The more data points we can collect about something, the more accurate it's going to be.
Yep.
Whereas with a, should I sit down, Dave? Am I in your way? I'll sit down. Maybe it'll be better. So the more data points we can measure, the more accurate the results are going to be. Whereas like a 5-star rating system, you have one data point right there, and it's not even a very accurate one. So Netflix measures each movie that's in their catalog via hundreds of criteria, mostly based on human input, actually, which is a weird thing. We can get into if you really want to. But their criteria, their hundreds of criteria, allow them to create over 80,000 distinct genres, which is why if you ever log in, they're like superhero movies about gay men in Paris, you know, something like that. It could be anything, like, who knows? It could be race car films from the 1920s, you know. It could be race car films from the 1920s starring a specific person. Who knows? Anyway, so they can do all kinds of crazy stuff through automated scoring. Here's the thing. Their scoring system on movies is actually driven by humans. They're filling out forms to do that. But their scoring system on you is entirely automated. And that's the part that people don't really think about, is that they're constantly scoring you. So what you're watching, how long did you watch it, those kinds of things. Your ratings that you give movies help them too. That's not automated, but it helps them too. But really it's about, what do you search for? What do you watch? How long do you watch it? Do you watch multiple episodes of the same television show? Do you watch multiple movies in the same series? Do you watch multiple movies by the same actor? All of that kind of stuff. That's all automated scoring.
Do you rewatch the same thing 4 times because you keep falling asleep?
There's that too. So, anyway.
They can't tell that you fell asleep.
They can
Because
actually.
you're rewatching it.
They actually can
Why
tell.
are you rewatching it?
Because
Because
they,
you fell asleep?
yeah, because they'll actually, they actually have a thing that pops up and says, "Are you still watching?"
Really?
Yeah. So,
Why would they?
After like 4 hours.
That's weird.
no, it's after one episode. If you, I don't know if they do that on movies, but on episodes, if you're watching multi-episodic content,
Oh.
after one episode ends and the next one starts, if you haven't interacted with your computer, they will, 3 minutes into the next episode, they will pop up a thing that says, "Are you still watching?"
Depends on the device.
Yeah.
With Chromecast, it just starts playing the next one.
True. And it does that on Apple TV too. It just keeps going. But if it's a computer, it will actually ask you. So, so heuristic analysis. Heuristics are basically shortcuts. It's taking logical steps based on your experience. And for this reason, perfection is the enemy of the good. You use heuristics to come to fairly accurate results very quickly, rather than going through all the research it would take to get a perfect result. So trial and error is the first tenement of heuristics. Oh, you're scratching. I thought I saw a question.
No, just scratching my head.
Occam's razor. Does everybody know what Occam's razor is? No? We'll go into that in more detail in a minute. Naive diversification is another area of heuristics, and we'll go into that in a little more detail too. So let's dive into some detail. Perfect versus good enough. A good approximation is better than no approximation. That's the first thing, right? So if you have something you can measure, even if it's inaccurate, it's better than just guessing off of nothing you can measure. Perfection isn't always possible or desired, because perfection takes a long time, and often, especially these days, you need to get answers really quickly, right? So if you can get a good answer quickly, or a perfect answer 5 minutes from now, take the good answer. Trial and error. So we can, one of the beautiful things about automated scoring is that we can look at what came out, what the results of our scoring were, and see if they match what we are expecting the result to be or what we want the result to be. So we can actually change our scoring system to match what we want the desired outcome to be, even if it wasn't. So this isn't, if you're trying to measure what user preferences are, maybe that's not so good. But if you're trying to say that this thing is better than that thing, and you want your system to make sure that this thing is better than that thing, you can change your scoring. And this is SpamAssassin is a great example of this. This piece of spam is getting through, and we don't want it to get through. So we will change our scoring so that in the future, that piece of spam will not get through. Okay. So Occam's razor is an often misunderstood and misquoted concept in science. There's a guy by the name of Occam, I forget his first name. It's spelled a little differently, but it's named after him. Normally, people say that the simplest answer is the correct answer, but that's not actually what Occam's razor is about. It's the one with the fewest assumptions is the correct answer. That's the important bit. The fewest assumptions, which means the more measuring points you have, the less assumptions you have, right? So it's very important that you keep that in mind. Naive diversification is another heuristic. It's basically says that when humans are involved, fewer choices create less noise. So if you were to give a user a choice between 5 stars versus thumbs up and thumbs down, you're going to get a more accurate result off of thumbs up and thumbs down than you will off of 5 stars. Does that make sense? So that's a simple tenet, again, of heuristics, is taking those kinds of things. And this comes back to getting accuracy from humans. Humans are erratic creatures, right? They may not rate the same thing on two consecutive days. They might give something they gave 4 stars yesterday, they give it 5 stars today. But if it's an up or down rating, it's a binary decision, they're much more likely to give the same result each time. They either liked it or they didn't like it. So then we move into deterministic algorithms. Given the same set of inputs, you should have the same set of outputs every time. That is, of course, unless you change the rules. Like we just talked about with SpamAssassin, if you were to give a different weighting on a different test, then you want a different result when it comes out the next time. So you have a different set of inputs that way. Because one of your inputs is your rules. We get into Bayesian probability and naive Bayesian classification, which I want to get into in more detail because these are very complex topics. And I could just word it out to you, but I think it's better if we go through some formulas. Sorry about the math.
Woohoo! Yeah.
I'm not very good at math, as Steve can attest to, but I think I got this right because I stole it. So Bayes' theorem is used to calculate probabilities. There's a whole discipline of math and statistics that follows off of Bayes' theorem. So there's Bayesian inference, there's naive Bayesian classification, there's all kinds of different things that are built off of just this one theorem. But basically, yeah, I love that little cartoon too. That's
Yay, excuses.
yeah. Statistically speaking, if you pick up a seashell and don't hold it to your ear, you can probably still hear the ocean because you're next to the ocean. Okay, so in a lot of cases, Bayes' theorem is the kind of de facto standard in statistics. Bayesian statistics are kind of the fundamental thing that most people use. So, given P and B are the probabilities of A and B being true. P A slash B is the probability of A is true given that B is true. All right, so let's work through that a little bit with an example. So let's say you have a factory and you're going to track the defects of the machines that are producing product for you, right? So we have 3 machines. The first machine is responsible for 20% of the output of the factory, but it also produces 5% of the defects, right? Machine 2 is 30% and 3%, and machine 3 is 50% and 1%. So, I mean, the first thing you might ask yourself is, why do we even keep machines 1 and 2 around if machine 3 is so much better, right? Well, when you're doing... That's exactly right. Machines in manufacturing are very expensive. They could be tens of thousands of dollars up to hundreds of millions of dollars per machine. So, and you know, as you grow, until you have reached a certain growth point, you can't afford that second machine of that really good caliber. So you use the bad machines to get you to the point where you can afford another good machine. So, but given the information that we have here, here's the question. If an item is chosen at random from the total output and it is found to be defective, what is the probability that it was produced by the third machine? Okay? So we got to work through this. Unfortunately, again, there's quite a bit of math here. Sorry about that. So, this is the first part of the solution. AI is the chance that an item was made by the same machine. So, machine 1 is a 20% chance, 30% chance, 50% chance. We talked about that. We're just doing it in decimal notation here. Okay? B is the chance that an item is defective, so therefore PBA1 comes out to 0.05, given that it's 5% of the defects, right? So 5%, 3%, 1% of the defects. So then when we put these together, it comes out that 2.4% of the total output of the factory is defective. Okay? That's a pretty terrible error rate. You don't want it to be that bad. Just a side note. But moving on. So we need to figure out, so given all this stuff, we've calculated a few different pieces that we need here. We need to know how much of the factory is defective in order to figure out how much of the output coming from machine 3 is defective. What's the likelihood that something coming from machine 3 versus all the other machines is defective? So this is the final portion of that. This is the formula as we work our way across. Again, showing the formula from the original one. I've just plugged in the numbers here. Comes out that 20.8% of it's a 20.8% chance that it'll come from machine 3. The defective part will come from machine 3.
Because the probability that it's
Sure. What do you want?
the raw numbers.
Slide with the
Yeah.
raw numbers. That's all I wanted to see.
Which slide are you looking for, Steve? That one. I think I've done this correctly.
That's
So,
what we're checking.
so it's 5 over 24 is the odds, and if you convert that into a decimal and then convert that into a percentage, it should come out to 0.20849 something, I think. So that comes out to 20.8% is the chance. If I did my math correctly, and I'm terrible at math, so I might not have. Okay, so so this is how you can use Bayes' theorem to calculate the probability of things. And when you're doing automated scoring, you don't necessarily have real answers to things all the time. So you need to infer what the answer is based on some statistics. You build a statistical model. So if you at least understand the basics of Bayes' theorem, then you can do Bayesian inference. So moving on. The basic principle of Bayesian inference is a subjective degree of belief should rationally change to account for new evidence. Okay? So in other words, update your probabilities based on evidence that you acquire. So in other words, to simplify that even further, your model should become more accurate the more evidence that you collect. Does that make sense? Okay. And there's, again, a whole field of study around just Bayesian inference, so we could have 200 talks on just that, but I'm just giving you the simplest piece of Bayesian inference.
It means the 5 statistic classes I took, at the end of it, the one useful thing I got was get dozens of data points and you'll probably be fine.
Yes. Yeah, and actually that's the whole point of why I'm showing you this. I wanted to mathematically show that the more data you have, the more accurate your result, your automated scoring will be. Even if you're not using probability at all, just knowing that that's how the math works out helps. So then there's this concept of naive Bayesian classification, and this is what SpamAssassin is actually using under the hood for most of its scoring system. It's basically using probability and inference to determine classification, and the naive part of this is that you assume one item's relationship to another item does not affect its classification. Okay, so you could actually use this. This is used in linguistics quite a bit too, where you're trying to come up with search results and you're scoring different words, but you're not actually paying attention to where this word is in relation to this word, right? When you're just doing initial scoring. That's how a lot of search engines are built. When you get into really good search engines, they actually aren't naive anymore. They are paying attention to the grammar of the whole thing. So, anyway, sorry, little side note there. So, then we need to, the last portion of this is to limit human interference, because again, humans are erratic creatures. So humans, here are the basic things. Humans are expensive. If you're having to pay a human to fill out data for you, it's going to cost you a lot of money. If you can do it in an automated fashion, it would be a lot less. Humans are slow. It's going to take a lot of humans to do the same amount of work that a machine can do in half the time. Humans make erratic decisions, as we talked about. If there's on a given day, they might rate one thing one way and another thing another way. So if you can figure out a way to have the machine analyze it and give you a result, you're going to get a much better result out of it. However, humans are way better at making subjective decisions. If you need to measure something subjective rather than objective, a human's going to be much better at that. Like, for instance, how pretty is this artwork? Do you like the melody of this song? Does this person's voice appeal to you? There aren't necessarily mathematical equations to give you those kinds of things. So you need, from that point of view, you need to do a little crowdsourcing. You need to get humans to give you this. And you come up with good averages by getting lots of humans to give you the same feedback. Also, humans can often process visual information so much faster and better than computers can. A prime example of that is reCAPTCHA. So reCAPTCHA is a service that is put out by Google, and ostensibly people install it on their websites to protect their website from bots. Because a bot, the reason that the CAPTCHA is a good determination against bots is because Google's infrastructure could not read this text. So if Google can't read this text, what are the chances that some hacker is going to be able to read this text, right? But humans can put that text together and go, yep, I know what that word is, no problem. So the thing is that Google's not doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They're not out there just being altruistic. They're getting something out of it. So what they're doing is they're saying, all right, here's this word. Maybe it says circumference, right? It's a big long word, but it was typeset in some crappy font 100 years ago on a book page that's kind of, got a bad texture on it. And so when they ran their OCR across that word, it couldn't figure out what that word was.
What's going on? Yep.
We're getting all their failures.
That's hilarious.
So then,
When they went from one word to two words. That's what they.
Yeah. So then what you got going on is Google is getting answers. They're doing they have this book scanning project where they're trying to digitize all these old books. They're getting answers to these questions they couldn't figure out. They're getting all you idiots to do that work for them, right? And
all of our customers.
yes. So they basically formed a botnet out of humans to solve these problems. And then once they were successful with doing it for their book scanning project, they got humans to start doing the same thing with images. So now you can actually use it for annotating images and proving map locations and all kinds of little things, where they're basically taking this task and dividing it up into these really little incy tasks, and they give it to a human as a reCAPTCHA, and they solve the reCAPTCHA, and now they have an answer to their problem. So, and how do they know that the human is giving them the right answer? It's probability, right. If multiple people give the same answer, the probability that they're giving the right answer, which is what Tim said, if there's two of them or two or more, if a lot of people agree that this is the answer, then there's a pretty good degree of certainty that this is the answer, right? Going back to...
They give you 2 words.
One of them.
Well, no, one of them you're sure of, and the other one is a test.
Well, the other thing was also true though. The reason it's now reCAPTCHA, which gives you the 2 words, was that CAPTCHA was broken exactly the same way. There was a system that was used to download files from distributed download sites, and it was a Java program. And when it got a CAPTCHA that it didn't know, it would ask you in person. But enough people would fill those out, and it had a database of all the CAPTCHA images. So for the most part, it would just know the answer, and it would fill it out for you. So that's how CAPTCHA got broken. Someone else built a database the other direction.
Okay, so any questions on that? Moving on. Okay. So another example of this is Amazon created this thing back in 2005 called Mechanical Turk. So Mechanical Turk is actually an ancient thing that goes way back to the 800s or something like that, where there was a little midget inside of a machine playing chess, but it was fooling all of the royals into thinking that this guy had built an automaton that was playing chess, right? But it's really a midget inside the machine. So the idea, Amazon has taken that same thing, and they've created a botnet out of humans. We're the midgets, right? We're the midgets inside the machine. And so if you sign up, I think it's mturk.com is where the human interface of this is. If you go to mturk.com and sign up, they will pay you, maybe it'll pay you 10 cents to do this task, whatever it is. It's like, or they'll pay you 3 cents, or they'll pay you 50 cents, depending on the task. So for example, they may show you a picture of some shoes, and from a drop-down list, you have to pick what color are these shoes. And a computer might go, well, that's pink, but a human might go, that's salmon. There's these distinct differences when you're doing that sort of thing. Another thing that that is common use of this is real-time translation. So somebody will they want to translate audio text or transcription. Sorry, there's audio that they want to convert into text. So you can actually go on there, and if you know how to read or hear the language and type it accurately, they will pay you like 50 cents a minute to go do this transcription. And then there's another task that you could sign up for, which would be to vet somebody else's transcription to make sure that it's accurate. And if it's not accurate, there's another one to go edit that. There's another job for that. And if that's accurate, or then there's another job after that to vet that one was accurate, and so on. They break down the task into these little tiny little things, right? So basically, Amazon touts this as artificial intelligence. So they're breaking simple tasks down into bite-sized chunks. They're paying cents on the dollar, and they're and enough answers form a consensus via probability. Then we know we have a pretty decent answer here. And it allows humans to perform tasks that machines are not really good at, or that it would be really hard to program. It would cost much more to hire a team of developers to work on this for 5 years to develop something than it would to just farm this out to cheap humans. Now, there's a lot of politics behind this too. A lot of people are like, well, this is terrible. Like you're not paying anybody, or you're paying people less than a minimum wage to do these tasks and all that kind of stuff. So there's a political implication of using humans as botnets too. But a lot of humans that sign up for this, and there are hundreds of thousands of people signed up on this, by the way, are happy to do it because it's something they can do with spare time. Some people find it fun. Some people it's an extra source of income. Whatever. Who cares? If they're willing to do the work, I don't think it really matters. But again, there is a political side to this, and so if you're going to use something like this, if you're going to use humans as botnets, you do have to think about those political ramifications to your application, because people might get angry that you're using humans to do this. Now, in the case of Google, they've created a botnet using reCAPTCHA, but it's perceived that the value they're deriving from this is equal to or less than the value that the site owners are getting to prevent spam, right? So, you know, you can play it a couple of different ways. So, that's kind of the theory behind all of automated scoring. Is everybody on board? Get the idea? Okay. So I think we can talk about some real-world applications. Even though reCAPTCHA and Mechanical Turk are some real-world applications, those are really just components in an application. They're not a full application. So the first one I want to talk about is SpamAssassin. This is probably the best-known automated scoring system in the technology world, because it was a huge success story, and especially in the Perl world. It's all written in Perl. SpamAssassin is. A lot of people don't know that, but for the longest time, and maybe even still to this day, it is the most powerful and most widely used spam filtration system there is. It performs a wide array of tests. It'll do linguistic tests on the text. It'll do keyword tests, like, does the word Viagra appear in this thing? If so, we're going to give it a little point, saying, you know, this might be spam. It'll do network level tests of, does this come from a known bad source, a known spam generation source? It'll do, you know, just a wide variety. Like, it'll do things like looking at how the message is composed. Is the message just text, or is it HTML and text? If it's HTML and text, it's much less likely that it came from a spammer. That's one of the rules that's built into SpamAssassin, because spammers often just will send text-only messages or HTML-only messages. They won't compose a dual layer for it. So anyway, there's all kinds of little tests that it will run through. Each one of those tests, the result of it has a score. It might be 0.1, it might be 2.5, whatever. The point isn't what the score is of each individual test, it's what the sum of all those tests come back as. And then SpamAssassin actually doesn't do anything. All it does is injects that score into the headers of that mail message and then forwards it on to the client or the server. And then it's up to the client or the server to actually make decisions on what number score is relevant for filtering out spam. If this is 50 or less, I'm going to say it's okay. If it's 50 or more, I'm going to say it's probably spam. You know, whatever. I should say some of the tests in there are things like, is the sender in this user's address book? If so, minus 10 points. So it's less likely to be spam because it came from a known source. That sort of thing. So anyway, that's an example of naive Bayesian classification, where we're basically taking statistical probabilities of all these different tests, adding them up to classify this thing to see if it is spam. Does that make sense? Okay. So I make a lot of board games. I design a lot of board games, and video games for that matter. But one of the big things in a game is that you want balance. You can have unbalancing things in a game, but you even want those to be balanced relative to the other things, because you don't want a runaway leader, you don't want the game to seem unfun or unfair, you don't want one thing to cost too much versus relative to other things. So this is an example of something I did for a game I'm working on called Neustadt. It's a city building game, and all the different tiles represent components of a city. So you might have a blacksmith, or you might have a granary, or whatever. This is a medieval city, I should point out. So you might have a farm, whatever. Those different tiles have different components on them. They might give you an addition to warfare. They might give you something for culture. They might produce income. There's all kinds of different little attributes that could be attached to these tiles. They might have different connection points. You know, how many roads does it have leading out? That's more valuable than something that's a dead end, for example. So I have a scoring algorithm that takes into account all those different things and then generates a cost for that tile based on what all those different attributes are. So that way, when I'm in there editing the point values of all these different things, I don't have to calculate what the score of this tile should be, what its cost should be in the game. it ensures that every tile relative to its merits is priced the same as every other tile in the game. Does that make sense? I have another game where it's a theme park building game, and I want every tile in a given level, so there's level 1, 2, and 3 tiles. Every tile in level 1 should add up to 8 points. Regardless of how it's composed, if it doesn't, it should throw an error to me to let me know that I did something wrong. Every tile in level 2 should add up to 15 points, and every tile in level 3 should add up to 35 points. So it's just, you know, I need to know that they're all equal within their own levels, right? And that when I'm filling this out, I haven't screwed something up. So that's another area where you can use automated scoring systems as tests to do balancing. The other really well-known automated scoring system that's out there in the technology world is called PageRank by Google. A little fun fact, PageRank is not referring to a web page, it is referring to Larry Page, the CEO of Google. PageRank is a way of scoring web pages relative to each other, so that's how they come back in Google's search results. A page with a higher page rank is listed first in the search results when you search for the word car, for example. And how they determine that is basically the page rank of all the pages linking to this page gives you the page rank for this page. So therefore, if there are more important sites linking to you, or there are a lot of sites linking to you, you have a better page rank than something that doesn't have important sites linking to you. Now, this is a very naive view of what PageRank is these days. That's the fundamental tenet of what PageRank was in the beginning 20 years ago or 25 years ago. It has since has lots of little factors in there because people did things like link farming, where they'd build 1,000 websites all linking to the one page, and it would break PageRank. So obviously Google had to alter the algorithm to account for that. And also this naturally works better for old websites than it does for new websites. So that wasn't very good when Twitter all of a sudden came around and everything news oriented was on Twitter. Twitter is ephemeral, it's right now. So if PageRank doesn't affect right now, then it's useless. So they've made changes for those kinds of things. And you know, they just keep adding more and more to the algorithm. So at this point, probably nobody, even the people that work there, know all the things that are in the algorithm. So anyway, so that's PageRank. Computer-aided diagnostics. So this is an area of medical imaging that is really hot right now, where the computer will actually tell the doctor where it found disease, or where it found a fracture, or where it thinks something is. So that this is an area for further study, that sort of thing. And the reason for that is that when you're looking at all these things, you might see, like in this particular image, you're looking at all those little white dots in that person's lungs, right? And is that disease or not? I don't know. Doctor could spend hours looking at that to see if it's a disease, and that could cost somebody's life, right? Spending hours on that. Well, it turns out that a computer is very good at analyzing this sort of image, and this white dot relative to that white dot is actually disease, where the other one isn't, right? So it's actually able to look at that and find areas for further study so that it can help pinpoint that disease really, really quickly. So this is another area where automated scoring systems can make a huge difference. So I come back full circle to what I asked at the beginning, which was, why am I talking about automated scoring? And the most recent reason for that is I encountered a problem at the Game Crafter, which is where I work, about how to, we're doing a new thing called crowd sales. It's a crowdfunding platform that we're building into the Game Crafter. So you guys might have heard of something like Indiegogo or Kickstarter. Those are crowdfunding platforms. Basically how they work is you put your product up on there and you say, I need to raise $10,000 to fund my product, and then I will give you a copy of that product for you giving me a pledge of $50 or $100 or whatever it is that you're giving. So it's like micro investments essentially. And there's a tipping point. Like I said, there's that I need $10,000 to do the minimum run of this. But often there are then stretch goals after that. If you reach $10,000 and you're only halfway through your campaign, you might throw up a stretch goal that enhances the product in some way, or maybe it provides a tack-on Halo product, like you get a t-shirt or something. So the problem with that model is that often those stretch goals either are substandard quality because they weren't developed until they reached their first goal, whereas the product itself had spent years in development prior to that, or they don't really put enough time into figuring out how much it's actually going to cost them to do these stretch goals, and therefore they go bankrupt and you never get your product, but you did pay your $50. Happens all too often. Sometimes people will take out loans on their own house to pay for their Kickstarter because they didn't put enough into it, but they don't want to disappoint their backers. Right? That has happened multiple times too. And it's a sad state of affairs. I wanted to come up with something different, so I came up with crowd sales. Crowd sales is a different way of thinking about crowdfunding. Instead of doing all these stretch goals and add-on products and things like that, we are just going to give people a discount. If we sell 25 copies of the game, that's great. We'll give a discount. If we sell another 25 copies, we'll give another discount. If we sell another 25 copies, we'll give another discount. And we'll just keep doing that until we can't give people any more discounts. So this way, nobody's going bankrupt because we know how much it costs us to make the game. Let's say it costs us $10 to make the game. The game normally sells for $20, let's say. So then the designer obviously needs to make some money. Maybe they're going to make $1 on the game or $2 a copy. So that means that our maximum discount can be $12. I mean, it could be down to $12. So maximum discount could be $8 for the game, right? So we've made our money, the designer has made their money, and the buyer is getting an $8 discount off of their game.
If enough buyers.
If enough buyers pile in.
The first buyer doesn't get much.
Right. Yep. Except that they do, because we don't charge, we're not going to charge their credit card until the end of the sale. So everybody that buys that game during the sale gets the same discount. So it might start out at 25%, but everybody gets a 40% discount by the end, or whatever it turns out to be. So then the question comes, we have 50-some thousand games in our library. We have 3,000 of them published to the public store. How do I pick guinea pigs to test in this new crowdfunding platform, right? I need to come up with a list of 20. I need to come up with a list of 5. I need to somehow narrow the field. I can't possibly look at and play 3,000 games, right?
Yeah.
Can't do it.
He does his best, but at this rate, it will take a while.
So, yeah, I can't give speeches if I'm playing games. So, how do you narrow that field? You know, you could hire a bunch of people to go play every game, I suppose. But then I'd have to pay to manufacture a copy of every single game also. I'd go bankrupt just trying to figure out what games to put into this sale system where I'm making less money per copy, right? So that's not going to work. I need an automated way of scoring these things. And of course, I've been using automated scoring systems for building games for a long time. We also use automated scoring systems in various processes of the manufacturing process for the Game Crafter. So now it's, can I create a scoring system that's going to tell me what is the best game for the crowd sale? So I need to know that it's a high quality game. I need to know that it's got good artwork. I need to know that the rules are comprehensible. I need to know that it has enough meat on the bone that we can actually give a decent sized discount to the thing. I need to know that it doesn't have a lot of sales already, because if it's, you know, if it's sold a couple thousand copies, then likelihood that anybody's going to want another copy of it is less, right? But I don't want it to be completely unknown, so I want to know that the designer has some cred so that they can bring some crowd to the crowd sale, right? So I have all these attributes that I need to figure out how to measure and put it into a system. So so how do I determine what is the best game? to put into this system. And first I need to determine what is best. What does best mean, right? How do I rank all these things? I've got art and value and theme and all these different things that I need to rank somehow. And of course the answer is that those are all important, so I need to measure every one of them to determine the best. But not only do I need to measure every one of them, I need to weight every one of them, because they're not all created equal, right? Like, whether or not it has a good theme is far less important than whether or not its art is stellar. Whether or not it is it allows 7 players is far less important than whether or not it's a good game that people are going to be happy with. Or even, for that matter, are its rules comprehensible enough that you can even learn the game? You know, that's very important. So I had to come up with this little scoring model, and I did. I came up with a very minimalistic thing, measured 35 criteria, and ran it through this algorithm on the site, and I came up with a list of, it gave me a list of 25 games at the end. And from there, I looked at those 25 games physically myself with my own eyeballs to make sure that the art was good, because I didn't have a way to measure the art yet. So from that, I narrowed it down to a list of 4 candidates, contacted those guys, and now I have my list of people for my guinea pigs for the crowd sale. But in doing this, I was actually in the chat room on the Game Crafter asking people what about some different things, right? I wasn't specific. I didn't tell them anything about crowd sales. Nobody knows this exists. You guys are the first people outside of the Game Crafter to hear about this. It launches tomorrow. So it's that new, right? Nobody knows about this. But but I'm asking about aspects of this in the chat room on the Game Crafter, and people are finding out that I can score their game. And they're like, score my game. So then I'm like, I run their game through the algorithm, and I tell them what their score is, and then I'm like, yeah, it scored 35.2 out of 200 points. What do you, 35.2? That's terrible, right? They don't even know what I'm scoring. They have no idea what the criteria are, but the fact that it's 35.2 out of 200 points is terrible. You know, it was the worst day. I got actually a nastygram via email from one guy saying, how dare you score my game so low? You've not even played it. And I'm like, you don't know what I'm scoring. So it's not that his game was bad, it's that it was a bad game for the crowd sale, because I had a very specific set of criteria. And one of the things that he failed is that, in his case, his game is marked up by 50 cents over cost.
Right.
Oh.
There's no there's no discount. Right. So so anyway, obviously when you're scoring things, you have to keep in.
Did you then tell him that, or?
No, I didn't tell him that, because I didn't want anybody to know why I was scoring their stuff. But the beautiful thing was that people were so excited. There were, I don't know, that night I think there were 30, 40, maybe 50 people in the chat just talking about their games or whatever, and then I interrupt them with this little sideline of scoring, and everybody's so excited, and it got my wheels turning. And I'm like, if people are this excited, I should come up with a way to score games anyway. Different from my perspective, but from a consumer's perspective.
Sure.
Because now I have a way to tell consumers, to give them a confidence score of how good is this game. Are you going to get a good bang for your buck? If you plop down $35 or $50 or $20, whatever it is on this game, is there a reasonable chance that you are going to like this game? Yeah.
So wait, you actually don't have a scoring system in the Game Crafter at all?
Not like that.
Unless you just wrote it.
He lumps all his 3,000 published games together in one big pile.
I have ways. I have a big taxonomy system.
Awards and stuff.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes. So we have this notion of an accolade. You can gain an accolade by doing something. So like you win a contest, you get an accolade for that. If a professional reviewer reviews your game, you get an accolade for that. If you get a certain number of sales, you get an accolade for that. There's all kinds of accolades that you can achieve. And there's a giant taxonomy system too. Like, is it a sci-fi game or a zombie game or whatever? Is it an abstract strategy game or a family game? Does it have swear words in it? You know, is it an adult type of game, or is it more, you know, family friendly? Whatever. So we've got lots of different things that we track about games, but we don't have a score, one score that you can go, this game is relatively better than that game. So that's where GameRank comes in. I'm coming up with this mechanism to score games on their relative merits so that I can give a consumer confidence rating. And it came to me that I could do this. This would be useful to the game designers too, because now once I have this score, I can actually tell them what they can do to improve their game.
Yes.
I can say, hey, you know what, your art sucks. Or, you know, maybe you should get a sanity test to go through your rules. Or maybe you should, you know, if you just added some photos of your game to your shop page, maybe you'd get more sales. You know, that sort of thing, because I can rank all these different things. So I started coming up with a basic ranking system, and there's I don't know, like 200 things that can add points to the game at this point. But here's a few of them. So for every sale you make, you'll get a point. For every star rating you get from a customer, although I think this one's going to go away because I think I'm going to go with a thumbs up, thumbs down model. Yeah. But right now, for every star you get on a game, you'll get 20 points for every star. So if you get a 5-star game, you could actually get 100 points from that one customer, the one person that rated your game. For 500 points for having downloadable rules. It's very important when you're dealing with an online shop of selling board games that people have some way to evaluate whether they're going to like the game. And the best way to do that is to show them what the rules look like. They might actually read the rules. They might just look at the artwork in the rules, that sort of thing. So we'll give them some points for that. 1,000 points for each review from a professional reviewer. I don't even care what the score was from the professional reviewer. The fact that you put it out there and have that linked from the webpage means that it's worth something, right? Regardless of whether or not it was a good review. If they hated it or loved it, it's still worth 1,000 points. Now, I might give extra points for if it was a good review, but I have to come up with some way of then taking into account whether it was a good review. And a lot of reviewers, board game reviewers, don't even give it a score.
Right.
They just give a written review or a verbal review of, yeah, it was okay, it was a good game. But there's no like 1 out of 10. Yeah, you don't know if you like the reviewer.
If people don't like them, then they're not going to like what they say.
Right. So there is inherent value in the fact that it has been reviewed and there is a link to that review from the game page so people can check that out. 1,500 points for winning a game design contest. 500 points for just placing in a game design contest. 2,000 points for being selected as a staff pick. Once you add in all these little point things, you know, you're going to build up a score over time of what can, you know, of how good this game is.
And those last 3 things kind of add up. I mean, if something has won a game design contest, there's a good chance it's already been to, or is about to go to a professional reviewer and be a staff pick.
Right. Yeah, there could be some cumulative things. But so these are things that I can easily measure about the game without humans. I can just go, there is a link to a reviewer here. It does exist. That's an automated thing. It has made a sale. I can give it a point for that. There is a star there that somebody gave it. I can give a point for that.
So how do you measure the scoring system?
How do I measure the scoring system?
How do you measure? So the scoring system is all based off of assumptions that these are the things that equal a good game.
Yes.
So how do you measure over time that your scoring system is actually doing what you think it's doing?
That I still have to work out, but I have known good quantity games. I have games that I know are very good games, so I can use them as my baseline. If they score better than all the other games in the site, because they've had a lot of scores, they've had a lot of really great reviews, they have stellar artwork, you know, that sort of thing. If those are my top games when the scoring system is done, I can be relatively sure that the scoring system is relatively accurate. So that's my initial baseline.
Wow.
Over time, I will have to come up with some way of measuring that. But I also have some more things here that are going to prove even more impressive, I think.
You need a scoring system for your scoring system.
I do.
Start that
Well,
rabbit hole.
One thing I know, Netflix did a competition where they would give you a
Improve the algorithm.
big load of data, but they also kept some data on their own side. And you came up with an algorithm that would do good stuff, and they ran it against their other data. And it was basically, how good would your algorithm predict what that guy would like? But they already knew what that guy liked.
Right.
So,
It's never
Well, they
So-
think they know.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the first part of this, right? We come up with a way to measure some of these easily measurable things. But then we got to come up with the way to measure the hard measurable things, because whether or not it has been reviewed by somebody or whether or not it has made any sales can't be the only determination of whether it's a good game, because we haven't gotten to really the game content yet, right? There's no content here. So we have to measure the content somehow of the game. So other than we do have the star ratings and we have the reviews that somebody did. So the first thing we need to do is we have this system on the site already called a sanity test. You can pay 25 bucks and one of our professional editors will read the rules to your game and see if they can figure out how to play it. They will offer you advice back on how to fix your rules, and they will also look at your shop page and say, does this look appealing to me? Would I consider buying this game based on the shop page? That comes out to 100 points. It's a big rubric that is predefined. They always have to fill out the same things. The point values for everything are predefined. They don't get to type in point values. They say, if it has these things, then it is this point, and you just click on that thing. And I can show you a sanity test in that a little bit here. But it's as tight as you can get for a human-oriented system, right? That's measuring something subjective. It's not perfect. It has humans, but it's pretty damn good. And so I can take that into account. What did they get on that? I can give them a rating based on that. And right now I'm thinking maybe that's 15 to 1,500 points that they get for that sanity test, but maybe it should be more. I don't know. I'm not completely done with all this yet. I've got to do a lot more massaging. But we have this thing, and if you get 70% or above on your sanity test, or 70 points or above, you get an accolade. If you get 80 or above, you get a second accolade for 80. If you get 90 or above, you get a different accolade for 90 or above. So you have really good rule set. You have a really nice shop page. That's a pretty good indication of whether or not you have a good game, because you've put a lot of time into making good rules and making a good looking shop page. But that's only part of it, right? We also need to know whether or not the art is pretty. And pretty is
Subjective.
very subjective, right? So is it universally pretty? Not just is it pretty to one person, is it pretty to 100 people, right? So I'm coming up with an art test which is basically hot or not for game art, right? So I'm going to show them 10 samples of artwork from the game.
Oh, it's not you give it to a guy named Art.
No.
Yes. Okay.
I'm not giving it to a guy named Art. I'm going to show them samples of 10 pieces of art from the game. Some of it's going to be from the shop page, and some of it's actually going to be art assets in the game itself. And I'm going to say, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think of this art? I'm thinking I could go with up or down votes, but I actually think I want the gradation here. I want the 1 through 10 on this case. It's a tough call, but I'm feeling like that's... I think that I might get slightly better results even with the randomization of having different people voting on different things on different days. So I'm going to show 100 people, or 100 people will vote on 10 different pieces of art, and that'll give me a nice little sampling of whether or not this game is pretty. Yes.
Oh, I was just going to comment that with statistics like that, it's pretty common then to take you can scrub your sample base and just be like, anything below this and above this are outliers, so let's not even do that. Clean up your sample base, and then that'll give you a lot better.
Yeah, taking outliers out definitely helps in those kinds of things for sure. But the bottom line is,
You're summing it, so in a sense, you're doing that already.
I am giving an average, but if you take out the outliers, it'll dramatically affect the average.
Right, your standard deviations.
Right. So, like, for example, The Captain is Dead is one of my games. It's on Board Game Geek. On average, if you take out the outliers, it ranks at 8.9 is what its overall rating is out of 10, right? With outliers in, it's a 7.4 or something like that. So it's a big difference I mean, it only sounds like 1 point, but it's a big difference.
But in your system, that's going for 1,400 points to 1,600 points.
Yeah.
The weight of that itself, can handle it. You can do it,
Yeah.
but
So if you consider standard deviation, you have a 1 to 10 ratio. So then 6 with a standard deviation of 4 tells you that there's a great amount of variance in the choices. A 6 with a standard deviation of 1 tells you most people will rate it -. So if more people who say it's around a 6 than you do for the other one,
Yeah.
that's what drives your higher rate. I don't know.
Anyway, there's a lot of work to be done here. That's the bottom line. I haven't even started working on the art test. This is just my idea of what the art test might be.
yeah.
So that's another way that we can measure the quality of the game. If it's got good art, that's a lot of what people's mental focus is on a game. Like whether they even want to just sit down and play the game. If they don't find it pretty, they're like, I don't even want to give it a try. So, but then we have to find a way to go with a really subjective, how does the game play? And that is ridiculously hard and ridiculously expensive. But I do have a solution for it. I'm just not sure I'm even going to bother implementing it. Because at that point, we're going a little too far down the rabbit hole.
So, Jake, just this is a little bit of a side, but have you thought about offering people like game crafter points for doing the tests?
Yes. Yeah. The art test will be paid for via crafter points.
Okay. You could do something similar to that and say, here's the online directions. Where does it rate on the sensitive scale? You understand it?
Yeah, but that's what the sanity test is for. That's actually...
Right, I know, but having more of the I don't know what you would ask people, but I don't know, it's just a thought.
So looking at rules takes a long-ass time.
Yeah,
So that's not something I can really... I'd have to pay a lot of crafter points for somebody to be interested in that. That's why there's cash tied to the sanity test. But with the art test, it doesn't take long to rate something 1 to 10, right? And get yourself a few crafter points. Crafter points are like frequent flyer miles, but in our community, and they allow you to do all kinds of crazy stuff. Anyway, so the next piece is I could theoretically, and I have talked to people about doing this, a blind test service. So blind testing in the game world, in the board game world, is you send your game out to people you do not know who have not played your game before, and they try to play your game and give you feedback on how it went. So here again, there would be a rubric that they would have to follow, just like sanity testers do, and probably some photographs and things of that nature too. And they play it, they get a rank, and then this would have to be worth a lot more than a sanity test as far as points in the overall game rank system because they actually played it. The problem with this is that it's with a sanity test, it takes half hour or an hour to read the rules and give you some feedback off of it, right? With this, it could take a couple hours to play the game, to learn and play the game. Plus, you have to pay to manufacture and ship the game to somebody. Plus, you have the shipping time. You're probably talking about a month and a half before you even get feedback back from it. Whereas, in a few days, you can have back the feedback from a sanity tester, even if they're backlogged. So, I'm not sure that this will work financially if people be willing to pay for what it would cost to do this, but it's a possibility. It's something we could do. And if we had enough of it, we could actually have local testers, blind testers, so that we could actually pay our own staff of blind testers so that there wouldn't be the shipping time at least. You'd get
Do it at the factory.
do it at the factory.
Well, if you're not giving them to truly blind testers, you can reuse the game printed rather than having to ship one game out and that game's gone.
You could just do that on Monday Night Game. Yeah,
Find enough people who just want to play games with them.
Yeah, that's it's a lot of time. Depending on how many people do this, there could be, we have 30 sanity tests a month, maybe. So that'd be, if we got 30 blind tests a month, that's a lot of games to play in a month. So anyway, so that's that as far as scoring. But the score is useful to the consumer to get a confidence that this is a decent game that's worth their money and time. But what else could we use it for? So we could rank our search results with it so that better games show up at the top, just like Google does with PageRank. We could give top 10 lists in various categories. So this is the best game in the zombie horror category, you know, that sort of thing. You got the consumer confidence. And then I think a big thing about this is going back to that unlocking eligibility for stuff. Like, there's no point in doing a sanity test if you don't have at least this score from all these other things. It's going to cost you $25. You don't want to waste your $25. I don't want you to either, because that's a bad customer experience, right? But it becomes a privilege. Now, I can do a sanity test, so maybe more people would be interested in doing sanity tests. What's that?
Did you mean a blind test?
I mean sanity test.
You mean
cost $25.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
You mean that your score can be a precursor to somebody going and getting a sanity test, because a lot of things that people are checking on now are automatable.
Yes.
So you do the automatable checks at least.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that'll do a sanity test. They'll pay the $25 for a sanity test, and they haven't even filled out hardly anything about their game, right? They haven't even uploaded rules. Now, of course, we have a thing built in that says you can't do a sanity test if you haven't uploaded your rules, because that's what we're doing the sanity test on.
And what are the statistics on how many people tried?
Well, originally, I didn't have that block in there when I first launched the sanity test, and in the first week we had 5 people that paid for the sanity test and have not uploaded rules in the first week. Now, I don't keep track of how many do it, but I do keep track. We do still have people. I don't have any idea of whether or not it's rules that they have uploaded. I just know that they have a document that we can download. We still get 2 or 3 times a month, we'll have somebody upload something that isn't their rules, mark it as downloadable rules, and then want us to do a sanity test. So maybe it's a character sheet, or maybe it's a print and play copy of their game, or whatever. It's not rules, and they want us to do a sanity test on it.
Test 0% sanity.
Yeah. So, but it could unlock other things. Like, you can spend crafter points to promote your game to our Facebook feed or our Twitter feed, you know, that sort of thing. So maybe you can't do that until you have a certain level of points, right? We have all kinds of advertising options inside the site too. There's featured status, so you show up glowing orange in different search results. And there's showcase, which is this big banner at the top of the front page. You can't be a showcase unless you have certain criteria. You already have those criteria, but I could add an additional criteria if you have to have a certain number of points.
The precedent for that would be something like Stack Overflow, where you get more permissions on the site itself, just for how many points you've acquired for contributions on the site. The difference being GameCrafter, you've got sort of an objective thing you're scoring on, versus Stack Overflow, it's just how many upvotes have you ever gotten.
Right.
But that kind of thing, like, you know, you get 100,000 points, you're a site admin, you know, kind of thing. Not that you give that away for your site, but you know what I mean.
Right. No, I get it. Yeah.
You get credibility out of the game design.
Yes. So, anyway, there's lots of stuff that we can do with this, and I just thought it was a very interesting topic and thought I'd share it with you guys, and hopefully you have found it interesting. If you have questions, let's talk about that, but otherwise I'm done. I can show you some examples of some of this stuff if you want. I can show you either screens of like the sanity test, what that looks like, or I can go through some of the code, although that's very boring because
I'm curious to see the code just to see a little bit of it. I'm not even saying you got to go through it in detail. Just curious how you structure it.
Okay, like, well, the game rank stuff I can't really show you because it's not there yet, right?
Well,
this is a thing I just started, but I could show you like the scoring system for Neustadt if you wanted to see that. I mean, something like that.
I ask that because I've actually tried to write a couple of these, and then I always get lost in the details.